So welcome to the sociology webinar. My name is Dr. Kathleen Gilmore. I'm the faculty chair for the sociology department here. We have also
Dr. Tim Larkin.
And Professor Kristen Richardson.
So we thought we would, well, actually I think I went out of order, but we thought we would check in with you and see who all is here. And if you could maybe just say your name and what courses you teach, and maybe also where you're located.
Okay. Deborah, oh, somebody start talking. Deborah Wilson, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, Deborah Wilson, sociology. I teach intro, globalization, social problems, everyday sociology. I think I left one out. Anyway, I'm from North Carolina.
My name is Joe Williams. I'm from Orlando, Florida. I teach social problems, everyday sociology, and principles of sociology as of right now.
Online or on the chat, we have Amber Carrot. I apologize if I mispronounced your last name, but she's in Phoenix and primarily teaches SOC 102 and SOC 220, which is social problems. And then also Anthony Brown chatted, I teach principles, intro, human behavior, social problems, and a couple of others from Mississippi.
Hi, I'm Jerry Willis from Rhode Island, the smallest state in the country, and I teach research methods.
Oh,
Okay.
This is Robin King in Virginia, and I teach the sociological imagination as well as introduction sociology theory, 471 and 417 and 481.
all right.
Stacy Tucker from Tennessee also teaches intro, sociological theory, and also the grad intro course.
Oh, great. Like to hear that. We have some numbers for our grad program today too. All right, I think that's everyone on our list. Is that right? Okay, so let's take a look at our agenda. We just did our introductions. We're going to talk tonight a little bit about program and GCU updates. We'll look at department text reading theme that we've talked about on campus and wanted to share with you and see if maybe we can incorporate that into the online platform. And then also thinking creatively about problem solving in the classroom. We know that you all have some really good examples of thinking creatively about problem solving in the classroom. And then also with some of the changes at GCU, we're now eligible to apply for research grants. So we thought it might be an interesting idea to talk about some research collaboration through a brainstorm to maybe kind of bridge the online with the ground and do some research together. So I'll be thinking about that as we go along. So program and GCU updates. First of all, you'll see the online program data. Oh, is that okay? This is campus.
The on top information is on campus.
Oh, okay. The numbers up at the top are ground numbers, and if you look at fall 18, we have 211 students in the Bachelor of Science in Sociology with an emphasis in social work, and 109 in our Bachelor of Science of Sociology. Probably more importantly, we can look at the total number of students. I don't know that we have those on there, do we? We don't.
For online, unfortunately.
Okay, I looked them up, so I have them.
Better.
We have for our Bachelor of Sociology, Bachelor of Science in Sociology, we have, let's see, 271 students in that program. In our sociology with an emphasis in social work, we have 834. Now, I looked at last year at this time, and last year at this time in our sociology program, we had 336 students, and we had, in our emphasis in social work program, we had 590 students. So we've grown in one, but I think what's happened also is that our sociology students have found a place in the emphasis program. We've had a lot of students, at least on ground, look at the emphasis program as a way to search for a job after graduation and be more job specific. So one of the other things that we also have is a master in social work. I'm sorry, not a master in social, we have a master in sociology, and that program was new this year. We already have 82 students in that master's program. So that's a really good number, I think. Our social work minor has 49 students presently, and last year at this time we had 25 students. So our program is growing nicely. That's almost a 50%, 100% jump, actually, 100%. So we wanted to share those numbers with you so you can see what you're all a part of. And
the rest of these are the online courses and their success rates and their seat counts since the beginning of 2018.
right, so take a look at what
success rate is technically a C or better.
So if you want to take a look at the courses that you're teaching and identify what numbers are connected to the courses you're teaching, that might be useful. Okay, so some of the other things that we wanted to bring up in terms of GCU updates were, of course, the nonprofit status of GCU now, which, as we mentioned before, allows us to apply for research grants, which I think is so exciting. How many of you are interested in doing some research?
With publication.
Say it again.
Go ahead.
I'm interested.
Same here.
Okay. All right, so be thinking about what topics you might be interested in. I think this is going to be very exciting. So we have a program on campus, and this is something we just wanted to share with you. We're doing an outreach program with 3 of the other programs in the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, with the psychology, with counseling, and with behavioral health, and then also the social work students, the emphasis students. It is with Alhambra High School, and we are working with 20 student volunteers to go into Alhambra High School and work as mentors with the students there. We're providing some training for our students here at GCU, and it includes an ongoing weekly supervision meeting that allows our students to process through the groups, to plan for group topics, and to address any issues that come up during the group. So it's just one way that we're trying to do some outreach as part of our program and allow our students to apply some of the skills that they're learning in the classroom. We also have our sociology club. The NASW conference is coming up in town. As we all know, if you are connected to social work at all, you know that there's likely a state conference within your state. And so what we've done is try to encourage our students to attend that conference, as well as in the spring, there's a conference specific to sociology. And Dr. Larkin has been going to that regularly, right? And presenting at that?
Yes, the Pacific Sociological Association.
So really bringing this up is really just an opportunity for us to talk about encouraging students to attend these professional opportunities for networking and obviously skill building and finding best practices in in the field. And so I don't know if that's something that anyone else has had experience with, encouraging students to attend those. Have you had any experiences like that where students go to a conference and come back and discuss it in the classroom? Nothing online yet. So I guess maybe we'd like to encourage you to check out the Sociological Association national, whatever regional conference is available, and then as well as the Social Work National Conference regionally that's available for your students, and maybe let them know about those. Students tend to shy away from that stuff, thinking that they have to be out in the field and doing professional work to be part of that. And I know NASW recently started a student membership, and it's $57 for students to participate as a member of NASW. One of the other things that we are planning for spring of, what is this, 2019? No, actually 2020. Spring of 2020 is a conference on campus in which we'll engage some of our students to help in the planning. But we're not quite sure exactly what the topic's going to be. So I think it would be interesting to get some feedback from all of you about what kind of a conference do you think mostly related to social work, but certainly sociology is part of that, but really focusing it on the social work profession and engaging professionals outside of the university to participate in the conference. So that's an exciting new thing that we're going to be looking at. I'm hoping that if any of you have some ideas or have some interest in participating in the planning, whatever your interest level is, please just let us know, and we would love to collaborate with you on that.
Should I provide your email?
You can provide my email, yes.
Kathleen.Gilmore.
Yes, Kathleen.Gilmore@gcu.edu. All right, let's move on to our next slide, department text reading theme. So at our initial orientation meeting at the beginning of the semester, we talked about, Dr. Larkin came up with this brilliant idea about trying to engage our students in the text. So Dr. Larkin, would you like to maybe talk a little bit about where that thought came from?
Yeah, well, part of it comes from our students are a bit resistant of really getting into the text. And so some of the reading problems we're having in the classroom Now, the older students online seem to do much better concerning the text because that's really their classroom, the text. And so we thought that'd be good to elevate the idea of really reading the text and getting the content from it. With the theme in our department of establishing definitional frameworks and analytical frameworks that takes a measure of needing content so they're able to go ahead and have conversations and really do some critical thinking. So it came from those concerns and also generally the idea that we are based in a discipline and we want to have that be elevated before our students.
Mm-hmm. So we came up with a few different courses that we thought we would share. I noticed that as we were listening to each of you and what courses you teach, SOC 445 was nowhere near anyone. So we may forego that particular one for tonight because I'm thinking that there's probably going to be some suggestions from some of you as well as to how you might be able to engage students in the text. So we're going to start with Dr. Larkin in SOC 102, who's in chapter 6 of the text.
What I wanted to do in providing kind of this overview is to create a bridge that can be used by online instructors as well as something maybe a resource for ground. But it really had a focus of how what can be a useful tool online. As you know, we look towards online the forums and the papers to be the interactive dynamic. And for many of our students, they've been asking for more. And one thing that we've begun to do is see our online courses begin to have some PowerPoints distributed through them and so forth. So what I did is put together kind of a mini PowerPoint about chapter 6. And with that, a resource that can go along kind of an additional. And so as we see chapter 6, the goal of the chapter is to have the student have this understanding about social structure. And there's some key elements within the chapter. One is we begin with social reality and how after the patterns of interaction, we see that the predictable social reality ends up being our social structure. Also in the chapter, there's an explication of bureaucracy, and this helps to go along with their paper that they have in the course. And then it kind of concludes with the intersection of social institutions and societal tasks. We'll go to the next slide. Oh, good. The chapter structure is that introduction, social structure, social reality, elements of social structure, conclusion, chapter review, and reference. One thing that I do in my class, I've also, when I've taught the SOC 102, and I'm speaking about that class, I ask them to give me a fast fact from a chapter. In class, I'll ask for, give me 3 things that were surprising to you, and I do my little talk about how all research comes from us being inquisitive and wondering about how did that have, what's going on here, those type of questions. I said, give us 3 things in bullet point form, has to be at least a sentence long to 3 sentences long, that are fast facts from this chapter and the content in it. And that kind of primes the pump. And many times you'll have these main sections come up by the student. In looking at social reality and social structure, I went into the chapter and pulled out, and this is part of what I also give to my students online, kind of some of my PowerPoints from class that I shape for their use and so forth. And the students online seem to really resonate with that. And we want to encourage you to develop that. We hope that the courses you're taking, you can let us know that which ones that you really want to end up kind of being our expert in. I've talked with Professor Richardson about how some of these courses, it takes about 3 times going through them to really get them down. And so if you're at the point where you've done a certain course a number of times, you like it, and you want to begin kind of developing what I call kind of the infrastructure, or building upon, I'm sorry, the infrastructure of the textbook, we want to encourage you to do that. So if you're a Social 102 person, I encourage you to put together a PowerPoint for each week from content, things along that line. You see in this PowerPoint, I define social reality and give the 3 steps there that lead into social structure. And then there's a social structure definition, which comes out of the idea of patterned interaction. And of course, I always have to have my students define, figure out. I tell them one of the skills we want them to develop is how to define, and that takes thinking and takes content and those coming together. And so we see this kind of pattern of interaction for social structure that becomes interconnected, whereby the interaction builds and creates, voila, the social structure, which is here it's labeled as groups, institutions, and so this is just kind of what we do. The next section is a brief little diagram of social structure. As you see in the textbook, how it's laid out is each of these social status, social roles, groups, networks and organizations, and institutions have a big section for it, by a big in terms of GCU ebook. And so I encourage you to kind of think through that, and that's an important part, and that's how we try to build up that section. Then what we have is looking at social institutions, and we really look at it from a structural functionalist perspective, where we say, what are they doing? And so institutions end up existing to meet the tasks needed for a society to continue on. And you can see kind of the little blurb here on it. So institutions are that stable cluster of the social patterns of status, roles, groups, organizations, and networks. And they meet the basic needs. And the purpose of the social institution is to meet the need within society. And the big question is, what are the needs? And so you go to the next slide, and you see a connecting up of institutions that's taught in the textbook. In America, we have 3 of the institutions kind of go together, which is government, military, and politics. And one of the reasons that our president is head of our armed forces, head of our government, and head of his political party. And then you see the other institutions labeled. Then on the right side are the 5 tasks the society must do to exist. And in the textbook is laid out these kind of understanding the tasks and the institutions and so forth. Not necessarily very deeply in depth, but that'd be a place where you could feel free to step in and help with that. So that's kind of the overview of that chapter in the sense of important context. You see up here for additional resources, something that I use in class, and I have my email. So if you email me, I'd be glad to send you it's just like a 5-page article by Henslin called "Eating Your Friends is the Hardest, the Survivors of the F-2227. This is the rugby team that got stranded in the Andes Mountains. They ended up eating each other to stay alive, and so a movie's been made about it. But what's wonderful is that Henslin goes in this article and uses symbolic interaction as a lens to look at what was going on. He also ends up really talking through, and how we use it in class is have the students see the different elements of social structure. So they talk about the status of the medical student, talk about the group that decided to cut up the bodies and things like that, the institution of the government, what they said to do or not to after they were rescued. And so that was a useful tool. It's a useful tool I've found as a resource to go and kind of bring together the understanding of social structure. Thanks a lot for listening.
Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Larkin about what he just shared?
Sounds good. Feel free to be in touch with me if you'd like me to send you that article.
Okay.
Amber Carrick said, not at this time. Thank you, Tim. Multiple thanks. Sounds like a great resource from Stacy Tucker.
All right, good. So our next slide is courtesy of Professor Richardson. I'll let her explain what she does in her classroom.
So I'm taking a little bit different tack than Dr. Larkin here. I am really interested in in-class activities that engage each learner in active participation in reading, in reflecting, in discussing, and sharing what they learn when they are engaged with the textbook as well as supplemental material. So you probably have experienced this. I think it's very challenging sometimes for students to really become engaged, to become active readers. This is especially true, I think, for ground classes. I think maybe not so true with what has been your experience with teaching online courses? Do you find that learners are involved in reading the resources that are provided to them, or do you find that they shy away from that a little bit?
Hi, this is Gary Willis from Rhode Island, and yeah, I do see that I teach both online and ground classes. I teach online for TCU, but yeah, there's definitely the distance gives them almost a barrier that they use. So they're definitely less influenced to do the readings. And it's up to us as online instructors to kind of tease that out of them to sort of get them to, use the readings more, whether it's on our discussion boards or the assignments.
To become more engaged with it.
Yeah, it's almost like being online helps the students hide from engaging some of the material.
They think that's the case.
Well, so what I'm going to do is share with you some things that I've done in a couple of the courses that I teach. And I do teach the SOC-400, which is the research methods. I also teach Sociology of Religion 412. I've taught SOC-102. This semester I'm teaching 320, which is Marriage and Family, and also Sociological Theory, which is 417. So the two examples I'm going to be sharing. Oh, you have comments?
Yeah, a couple other people have chimed in too.
Oh, okay, great.
From your original question to the group.
That would be wonderful.
Sorry, Anthony Brown mentioned one of the habits he's developed is that he asked the class that they recognize a certain point that was highlighted in this paragraph or this section. And then he said, I find when I do that, it helps the students to examine the reading further. So there was one comment there. And then,
that's a great idea, by the way.
And then Amber Carrick said, I see less involvement in readings and engagement from my online learners. So.
Less involvement from online learners. Yeah. Wow, that's really, that's hard to beat when we look at our ground students that are really not very engaged in reading. So again, I'm going to share with you some things that I have tried. You may have some wonderful ideas as well, or some ideas about how to expand on some of the activities that I've done with the students. But there's a couple of basic principles that I try to follow as I'm developing these activities. The first is to connect reading and pre-thinking or pre-writing activities with the written assignments. So if there's that linkage, I find that students are more motivated to engage in the reading materials if they feel like it's going to help them develop whatever the assignment is that they've got. The second principle is to structure sequential activities and processes to deepen and expand understanding and knowledge building. I think of it a little bit maybe like the Russian doll concept. So one sort of one level leads to the next, which leads to the next, which leads to the next. And so it's really a building process of their understanding as they engage with the material. And then the third principle that I try to keep in mind is helping them to balance independent reading and reflection with small group, and by small group I mean maybe engaging with 2, 3, 4 other students, and then discussing concepts of the things that they've read about or engaged with in the reading materials with that small group, and then sharing or summarizing basic key ideas from their small group discussion with a larger group. So I think those principles could be applied equally as well in the classroom, in the ground classroom, as well as the online classroom with some adaptation. So again, to kind of go into the details of what I do, I will share first with what I do in the marriage and family course. There's an assignment called the Marriage Typologies essay. And in that particular assignment, they're supposed to identify 6 types of marriages or relationships, describe characteristics of each marriage or relationship, discuss trends, and then discuss the advantages and disadvantages of each. So that's really quite a lot for them to put together in one essay, to gather material on 6 different marriage typologies. The textbook has a chapter where they review, where they go through not all the marriage typologies, but there's quite a few of them there, and there's probably, I would say, between 3 or 4 paragraphs to sometimes 3 or 4 pages in the chapter that talk about each of the typologies. So what I do is I organize them. Again, it depends on how many students you have in the classroom. But with the 6 typologies, if they're working in teams of 6, this is one way to structure it. So you've got a team of 6 learners. And then each learner is assigned to become a specialist on one marriage typology. So in my ground course, what I did was, again, it's hard, even though they have the textbook online, it's easily accessible to them. I noticed that many of the students, they just don't open it up. They don't read it. They don't engage with it. And so I actually, again, this is probably quite old-fashioned. It takes up tree space, but or it takes up tree life, I guess I should say. Uses the tree life in some ways. But I copy the sections of the chapter that each have to do with a typology. Each student in the group gets that smaller section of the chapter. And in class, they have an opportunity. I give them kind of some questions to go through that guiding their reflection, their reading and reflection. So they gather this material independently. They work independently. And I also encourage them, I give them each, or they can bring in their own individual journal article, or they also have resources that I give them. So they have the textbook material, they have a journal article on that marriage typology, And then we also use the Pew Research Center as a resource where they can go and find trends on marriages. So for example, how many couples, interracial couples are there? Has that changed over the years? How has it changed? Same with cohabitation and the various other types. So they're really looking at several different sources, reading sources and bringing it together independently on their own. And then they report back to the smaller group that they have. They, again, you know, each one is sharing what they've learned about their typology. And then in a classroom, in the on-ground classroom, then they can each, as a group, as a team, summarize the main things they learn, like the highlights on each of the typologies with the group as a whole. So this, again, becomes kind of like a snowball. If you have one group that's sharing their highlights, then you can have another group share their highlights and another group share their highlights until you have more, you know, more information on each typology that's been shared. And a kind of a variation on that is to have each, form them into smaller groups where only the small group focuses on one typology, and then they work collaboratively on that material, and then again they can share it with the group. So you can do similar types of things online in the discussion forum by breaking it down into smaller discussion forums. You can do that, right?
Yeah, they have the ability to, in some forums, do that.
In some forums?
Yeah. What's it called in online? CLC groups?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many of you have incorporated CLC groups in your classroom? And maybe your experience with that.
Got a chat. There's a class that has a CLC group assignment. Anthony Brown mentioned that.
Okay.
So this isn't really an assignment that's set up in LoudCloud. This is really something that would be organized as a learning activity for a particular topic. So in this case, it's, you know, the marriage typologies. But by the way, this could be used in any chapter that has a number of different categories of information. So I just do it with the marriage typologies. I've also done it in SOC 102 when we're talking about different, you know, like stratification systems, or any area where there's any chapter where there's a number of different topics or subtopics related to the major topic. This works very nicely for that, in that regard. And asking the students to first go in and read and summarize and reflect on the information that's in the textbook at least gets them into the textbook. The additional information, like using the journal article or the Pew Research Center or some other national website, that also gets them engaged. It can take more time, so depending on how much time you have, you know, maybe it's only working with the textbook or only going on the Pew Research Center to look for trends. But the idea is that first they're doing it independently, then sharing with the smaller group, and then sharing with the larger group. So there's, again, this building process. And the other thing that's quite nice about this is they've all shared this information that they can then use for their writing assignment. So it makes it much easier, less overwhelming for them when they initially think, oh my gosh, I have to write on 6 different typologies. How am I ever going to come up with enough information for that? This seems, because it's smaller chunks and it's been shared, it seems more manageable for them. And honestly, I think of it as a pre-writing activity. which helps them to be prepared when they actually do write their essay for the assignment. So do any of you have any questions or ideas to add to this particular activity?
Or any other ideas as a way to engage students in the reading?
Well, this last week we were talking about social problems and deterrence, and I created a CAT where the students contrasted and compared one of the popular criminal shows. I think it was Criminal Minds, and how did that help explain criminal behavior and try to engage them, and comparing and contrasting the television show with the textbook. And that was
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. There's so many students who love that show. They always talk about it.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that you're using the textbook as a tool. We really want to elevate the idea that we have to read the content. What I do when I'm, and you probably also do it, when we're teaching an online course, I will specifically reference sections of the textbook in my response, as well as try to push the kind of conversation towards the textbook. And so that's our help. And what that takes is that we've got ourselves as instructors to read the textbook. We really do. I hate to say it, but I've engaged some instructors that have not read, that aren't reading the textbook. And so we just assume, because we want to treat everyone as professionals and us as professionals, that we're doing that. But I just want to lay out that expectation. It's so important that we have read and know the textbook.
Amber commented that I add bonus participation questions on each week within the main forum.
Oh, good.
These questions offer an alternative topic of discussion for students in meeting the participation. For some of these, I ask students to reference stories or chapters in the textbook and then promote discussion from that.
Oh, that's a great idea too. Great. Yeah.
Thanks, Amber.
Yeah. So the stories on the side are things that I always try to get students to read too, because they're good application stories. They really allow students to apply the content to the scenario or the story that's in that section. They tend to just buzz right past those, and I'm not sure why.
Well, even if they're reading, it makes it more real. The concepts seem very abstract, and the stories help you understand that these concepts apply to real people. And
exactly, real life. Yes. Yes. So, any other examples? We love hearing from you.
Joseph Williams commented that he posts a follow-up question under many DQs that is alternative as well.
Okay, so follow-up DQs. Good. All right, so the point being that.
Sorry, there's a couple more.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Stacy Tucker said in the discussion forum, if the question can first reference the text, they will more likely go to the source. And then Joseph says, in addition, Joseph mentioned from the previous comment that in addition to the main forum chat.
Okay.
So there's other ways, just asking the students to raise questions about the material that they've read. Do they agree or disagree with the way that the author has presented the information? Is there something from their own experience that would lead them either to feel that the information in the textbook is resonating with their own experiences, or really quite different than their own experiences? Those are other ways to kind of engage them in comparing their own thinking and experiences with what they're reading about.
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
So I actually just wanted to share, so I also teach 417, which is sociological theory, and I noticed that, okay, yeah, oh, wait, we have 15 minutes, okay. Yeah, I'm hearing, well, what we'll have to do, those of you that teach 417, we'll continue this conversation at the next time we meet, okay?
Or they can email you and say, hey, what is it you were going to talk about?
It's Kristen, TIN.Richardson.
At GCU.edu.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that we honor your time. We know that you all have busy schedules too. So there's always more to talk about in terms of, you know, ways to engage students. So that'll be an ongoing conversation, I'm sure. So if we move to our next slide.
Yes.
One of the things we were thinking about is problem solving in the classroom. But before we even answer this question, I wondered if any of you can identify some problems that you do encounter in the classroom. Wanted to get a picture of maybe what you have to address.
It can be anything from using the Loud Cloud technology to interacting with students or the way that they interact with each other.
Including original work through discussion questions. I know it's sometimes difficult to get a variety of responses when it's the same question.
When there are weeks where there's a writing and an assignment that's writing intensive, sometimes I'll post the follow-up questions under the DQs and also the CAT in the main forum. There'll be less interaction with those extra participation things because the students want to just post their response to the question and get on to their writing assignment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
One thing I have found is that a lot of them wait until one of the students have said something in the discussion question, and then everybody will just start on the same topic instead of going to something new. And then I'll have to engage something different that they can start talking about. But they're good for that, you know, waiting until last minute.
So shifting topics.
Yeah.
I think one of the problems I've experienced in the online also is the elevation of their, or the privileging of their experience without grounding it in social fact. And so I really push my students to go beyond kind of telling their own story, in a sense, to really looking at societal interaction and understanding from a sociological imagination. And so it's not an easy thing to do for them because you don't want to discourage them, but part of our job is to get them beyond their individual opinion.
I had a student last week, he said, I referenced, we were talking about, again, deterrence, and I referenced how now the Department of Justice has engaged the city of Chicago to come up with some macro level ideas to combat crime. And one of the students said, well, stop and frisk is going to lead to killings. And I said, well, you need to do some research to show, you need to ground that in something. I'm like, you can't just say something incendiary like that, because I've never heard any type of causation from increase of stop and frisks to killings. I said, you need to take your preference and your opinion and ground it and compare it to something.
Research. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, so and that's exactly, I think, you know, what Dr. Larkin was talking about, avoiding that opinion and focusing on facts. Right, that's great. So being able to then think creatively about problem solving in the classroom. It sounds like, I'm not sure who that was that just said that. Who was that?
It's Joe Williams.
Okay, Joe. Joe, we need little like name tags on a wall or something connected to your voice.
Maybe what you could do when you say a comment, just say, "This is Joe," and so we know who's speaking.
Oh,
Yeah, it was good interaction though.
Yeah.
All right, so Joe's response to something that came in the classroom, I think that's a that's a way to problem solve through that. If you were to, I mean, I don't know if there's another example of how you might creatively problem solve through that situation. Certainly, you have to direct or redirect students at times.
Yeah.
But is there another example or another way to redirect that student, do you think? Anyone?
Anthony Brown made a comment towards the focusing on facts piece. He says it's hard sometimes for students because there has been a push that feelings or experiences trump facts. This is why I try to use tables and statistics to help students see past their views.
Oh, there you go.
So
tables and statistics.
Yeah.
And then another comment was from Stacy Tucker. This could be a conversation, is the issue of plagiarism that we face within the classroom.
Yes.
But as far as problem solving with that, that's more of a process than a.
Right.
Well, this is Tim Larkin. What I'd like to say concerning the plagiarism is that the Lopes right is still a work in progress, and so we may be a year away from where we'd like for it to be right now, but it's going to get there. So we just want to encourage you. Thank you for what you're dealing with as you're experiencing Lopes right.
I'm not sure if online instructors, they might still be using
Turnitin.
Turnitin
Yeah.
version. Which,
this is Deborah. We have Lopes right.
okay, never mind.
Okay. Are any of you using Turnitin? Okay, so Lopes right.
There you go, Lopes right.
That's right. I think it was October the 1st we started on Lopes right.
Okay.
Online.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so we've identified writing intensive weeks, trying to engage students as a problem, needing to shift topics periodically because they get stuck on one thing and just run with it, and then avoiding opinions, focusing on facts, and using tables and statistics to help with that. That's a great way to solve that. And then the question of plagiarism. So some of these things, as I look at the time, we're starting to run out of time, but is there anything from that list that we haven't addressed in terms of how you might creatively solve a problem, something that you use or incorporate as a way to solve any of those problems? And we can certainly revisit this list at our next webinar in the spring.
Nothing in the chat.
Nothing in the chat. Okay. So maybe
this is
go ahead.
Joe. I think one thing I've done in sociology and also in the nursing courses related to ethics and diversity is a lot of the students' experiences, and even my own, will be, again, it'll be explained or shown in some type of media form, if it's a song or a book or a news story or a clip from a movie or a TV show. And usually that helps the other students identify with that experience, and then they can critically engage that related to the content for the week and the textbook. So I think I wish we could embed videos into LoudCloud, it would be easier. Like even embedding our own into our posts, I think that would help.
Joe, have you tried to embed it in the announcement? I don't know because I haven't tried it on new LoudCloud. I'm just asking for information.
The LoudCloud
like a video,
hasn't changed.
attach it, take a video and attach it to announcement.
Actually, I need to try that.
Yeah, I think I do too. We'll both
You know
try
what?
it, Joe.
I need to try that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not trying to play gotcha. I was just really curious because that's like the only place I think that we might be able to, but I'm not sure. Adam, do you have any information on?
I'm sorry, could you repeat it?
Yeah, can we attach a video to an announcement, or even images, or?
You can attach them, but you'll have to download them.
I don't know if online has access to Loom at this point.
Yeah,
so.
I think really it's more like a link.
Yeah.
Okay. It's usually a link or a upload. Yeah. Something that you have to upload.
Okay. Thanks.
That's an interesting question to bring up, though, in terms of embedding videos in LoudCloud. All right, so this is an ongoing discussion I think that we can have. We can revisit some of this in the spring if people feel like there's still discussion to be had, or if over the next few months you identify some creative ways to solve some of these problems. Certainly, I know we all continue to try to address things as they come. So just make notes as you do those things, and maybe share those when we come back together again. Our last slide is the research collaboration brainstorm. So we have like 3 minutes left. And, you know, brainstorms are usually quick anyway. So let's take a look at any thoughts about some topics that you would be interested in terms of research, collaboration.
Yeah, this is Tim Larkin again. I think it's great, Dr. Gilmore, that you mentioned interests. So maybe that might be a first place to start. What are your research interests? Mm-hmm. And then we can go from there.
Deborah Wilson made a comment about domestic violence.
Okay.
Joe mentioned sociology of religion, and sociology of health.
Oh, hi, this is Jerry Willis from Rhode Island. Substance abuse and the sociology of healthcare are two research interests of mine.
Okay, great.
Anthony Brown commented, I would love to know your Social 417 techniques, the current Me Too movement, the potential reverberation throughout society and the business world.
That's a good topic.
Yeah, this is Tim Larkin again. As you're thinking about, I mean, I love the topics, the domestic violence, the social religion, the sociology of health, substance abuse, Me Too movement, etc. If there's a way that our students can be part of your research collaboration, Dr. Gilmore, Professor Richardson, myself would be glad to be kind of an intermediary or kind of your champion here on campus to work with you. So please keep us in mind and how our students might be a part of gathering data. Anything, Dr. Richardson, you'd like to encourage on that?
It seemed like several of you are teaching the SOC 400, the research course. Were there a couple of you that were doing that, I think?
At least one.
At least one.
At least one. so that may be a really good starting point. Students that are enrolled in that class, to get them thinking about practice. It's very hard for students to think to move from this pie in the sky type of research project. I want to know this and this and this and this, and these are all great questions. But how do you do a workable research project? And so that's really, I think, I see as our task, if we're going to engage students, is ourselves thinking about a workable research project and then thinking about a role for students in something that's really practical.
Right. How do we specifically engage them in action?
Yeah, this is Tim Larkin again. If I can give an example, I've found successful to use students in the area of lit review. That's what I've done in the past, and that's been a useful thing. I think it's great if you're able to engage your online students, but they may be too much of a moving target, and we may be able to be part of it, the glue for ground students to be interacting with you. So I'd love to see us use both.
Right.
But let us know how we can help. And my experience has been the lit review has been a useful way to engage students.
Yeah, we actually have a whole group of students right now who are helping with the Alhambra high school project. And in addition to putting together this mentorship program, we've got a group of students who are engaged in research, and they're helping us with that lit review. We have one student who is the research coordinator, and she coordinates all of the meetings and all of the interaction between the student researchers, and it's a really rich experience for all of them. So just be thinking about how you'd like to engage your students, and how we could collaborate with you, how we can support you and assist you in that process. There are research grants out there, apparently by the abundance. I don't know, I'm not sure. There was an email that went out recently about access to different grants as well. So anything that comes across, we'll try to send out to you as well. But it looks like we're out of time, and we would like to extend an invitation to continue this conversation, not just next spring, but ongoing as we move through the rest of this semester and the beginning of next for us, and as you continue to move through your courses. So stay in touch. Let us know if there's a way that we can support you through research, and if you want to work together on a project or whatever that looks like.
We're happy to talk either by phone or email or Skype or whatever context you'd like to engage as well.
Right, we could even set up a Zoom meeting for anyone interested in collaborating with research, and do that maybe on a monthly basis if anyone's interested in doing that. All right. Any last comments or questions?
Stacy says thank you, and great info.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything from Anthony.
So glad you could all join us. We appreciate your time and participation.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you. Have a good evening.